A year ago, I began a relationship with a married man. I know it sounds bad, but he chased after me for over a year. And before I knew it, I had strong feelings I couldn't avoid. The moment you know this person is married, you have to turn everything off and cut all contact with them. You probably loved that he was chasing you and the attention he gave you, but that doesn't excuse that. You knew he was married. He's an don't get me wrong. Guys who do that, trash. Within 3 months of entering the affair, we got caught. And he claimed he was leaving her and just wanted me to give him time. Within the next week or two, he reported me to HR. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, I was his boss. And got me pulled out of service, which eventually led to me being out of work for 2 months, getting demoted, losing pay, stock, and my bonus. And I had to move across the state for the position they offered me, or I could be unemployed. Needless to say, I lost everything. We still stayed together for months later, long distance, with me doing all the work to see him. But I won't lie, after losing everything I worked my entire life for, I couldn't lose one more thing. Mentally, I couldn't let him go, until I found out I was pregnant. He was okay for about 2 weeks, then he started saying he wanted to go back and make things right with his wife. I am not over the fact that you still got caught, got demoted from work, whatever it was, and still wanted to be with this man. At this point, I couldn't control my emotions and I told his wife I was pregnant. Well, he then tried to convince her that there was no baby, which I did not know I probably would have went along with because of how guilty I felt. So she texted me asking me for confirmation, which I gave her, and I told her I wouldn't be a problem and actually begged her to give him another chance because I felt horrible for what I did. Well, he got mad and immediately told me he was done with me and wanted nothing to do with the baby. That I wanted a baby and I got exactly what I wanted. I begged him to talk to me and reminded him that he got me demoted and I never treated him this way. Now, a few weeks have passed and I've still tried to get a hold of him and he won't talk to me. And every time I get on the phone, he just yells at me and tells me I got exactly what I wanted. And today I broke down and I was like, look, all I want is for you to be available if our kid ever wants to reach out to you, because I never had a dad growing up and that killed me and that I couldn't understand why he wasn't around. And he said, no, I don't want anything to do with that child. It's all yours. You got what you wanted with this whole thing. I then said, so if I wanted you involved, would I have to take you to court? And he says, do whatever you want. I told him I didn't want to go through the court and that all I wanted is for him to be there if she ever wanted to call, and he didn't even have to visit her. He didn't have to send money, just a phone call. And he said, why should I believe you? You're a liar anyways. I'm done with you and I don't want anything to do with that kid. All it is a reminder of how much I hate you. And I know I probably deserve this, but we had a child together, and as much as he hates me, I don't believe he should take it out on the child. Especially when he knew I wasn't on birth control for 6 months. I had been saying he wanted to have a baby with me and even picked out a name.
Imagine cleaning your 14-year-old son's room one day only to find the body of a missing girl under his bed. On November 13, 1998, Joshua Phillips was playing outside his home in Jacksonville, Florida with his 8-year-old neighbor Maddie Clifton until she mysteriously vanished. Hundreds of volunteers joined search parties, camera crews flocked to the suburbs, and Clifton's parents continually begged for any information on her whereabouts on news outlets. A week after her disappearance, on November 10th, Phillips' mother was cleaning his room when she noticed his waterbed was leaking, or so she thought. When she took a closer look, she found Clifton's body and ran outside to alert an officer as Clifton's parents were outside wrapping up a televised interview in hopes of finding their daughter. So, what happened? Joshua Phillips' father, Steve Phillips, was a computer specialist who was incredibly strict and violent towards his family. He became even more furious if other children were in his house without him present, even more so if he'd been drinking, which he often would. That day, Phillips' parents weren't home yet and he was playing baseball when Maddie Clifton asked if she could play with him. When police questioned Phillips about what happened, he told them that he accidentally hit Maddie with a baseball while playing and she started crying and screaming. He was afraid that he would get in trouble by his father and Clifton wouldn't stop crying, so he struck her in the face with his bat to get her to stop, but the truth was much darker. Clifton had been bludgeoned and strangled, but that didn't end her life. He shoved her unconscious body under his waterbed before his parents got home. At 5 p.m. is when Clifton's parents reported that their daughter was missing. Before nightfall, Phillips removed his mattress and used a utility knife, stabbing Clifton 7 times in the waterbed and slept on top of her for an entire week. While joining in her search with his family, police were stunned as they had searched the Phillips home 3 times but mistaken the stench of Clifton's corpse for the smell of several birds that the family kept as pets. His trial took place on July 6, 1999 and only lasted 2 days before finding him guilty of first-degree murder. On August 26, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Him and his mother have been trying to get him free since, and there's supposed to be a review of his sentence happening sometime this year or next. Do you think he should be given a chance at freedom?
Overall, I had such a good birth. I would do it over again a million times. It was just such a peaceful birth and so memorable. It was exactly how I would want my first birth to be like. Let's go back a week before he was born. I started having very bad contractions. My contractions were so intense, but they were over 20 minutes apart, so there was nothing I could do about it. Pretty much false labor, but my body was just getting ready, which it sucked in the moment, but I'm very grateful for, because I only had to push 8 times and I had him in like 20 minutes. And I swear the week's worth of contractions really helped my body get ready. If you saw the get ready with me about my scare, then you know Wednesday night I had a very bad scare and I went to the hospital. I was having back-to-back contractions. They were like 1 to 2 minutes apart. When I got to the hospital, they ended up sending me home because I was only dilated to 4. They told me that I have to pretty much just deal with them unless my water breaks or I dilate more. That whole night, I literally was just in pain with the contractions and there was nothing I could really do about it. Thursday, the 26th, I ended up going into the hospital again. I went in, still dilated to 4. They were going to send me home, but my doctor admitted us because obviously there was something going on. So what ended up happening was he was sideways and my body was contracting so much trying to bring him down, but my water wouldn't break. So it just kept contracting, trying to bring him down, but my body couldn't. When I got admitted, they wanted me to do all of these positions to try to naturally bring him down. I got to the hospital at 4 p.m. and I got on the epidural at like 11 p.m. that night. The epidural literally saved me. That was my first time in over 2 weeks that I didn't have a single amount of pain. All night I was contracting and then they checked me again and I was at a 5. They were like, okay, we're gonna break your water. They broke my water and I went from a 5 to a 9 in like an hour. All I needed was my water to break and everything would have went so much faster. I got this sudden urge to push and I was like, I need to push. And the nurse was like, can you wait? The doctor's not here yet. When people tell you it's a love that you've never felt before, they are not lying. I have never felt so much love in my life. Looking down at a little human that you literally made, it's the most insane feeling ever. My recovery so far has been very good. I'm not really bleeding anymore. I'm so grateful for all of the support that I have around me though, because I feel like that helps a lot. I would do it all again in a heartbeat. So that is my birth story. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for all of the sweet comments and all of the support. I love you guys and thank you for being here. If you have any other questions, comment them down below. And if you're a first-time mom and you're about to have a baby and you're very nervous, just know if I can do it, you can do it.
We're talking about the story of Jamie Rose Bolan. This case is horrific and it does involve the death of a child. So as always, your mental health is priority, always has been, always will be. If you think that this is going to harm your mental health in any way, please skip the video. 10-year-old Jamie Bolan was born in Oklahoma to parents Curtis and Jennifer. Jamie's mother, Jennifer, was a semi-truck driver. She was gone most of the time and quickly became distant. The parents separated and Curtis received full custody of Jamie. Curtis was a single dad who put every ounce of effort he could into making sure that Jamie had the best childhood as possible, and he did a great job at it. Him and Jamie had a very close relationship. When Jamie was around 9 years old, they moved to Purcell, Oklahoma, and they moved into a new apartment. Jamie started 5th grade at a new school, quickly made friends. She was well liked by all of her classmates. She has been described as a bubbly, intelligent little girl who had a contagious laugh. At school, she loved to read and hang out with her friends, and at home, she loved to ride her bike around the apartment complex they lived at. It was normal routine for Jamie to get home from school before her dad did. She had a key that she would use to let herself into the apartment. She would usually get home, grab a snack, let their dog out to use the bathroom, and then she would hop on her bike for a couple of hours until she waited for her dad to get home. A lot of the neighbors in the complex would often sit outside in the afternoon or just leave their doors open. It was nothing unusual. It was a really friendly neighborhood. April 12th, 2006 was a Wednesday, regular morning. Curtis dropped off Jamie at school. After school, Jamie got home around 3:30. She let herself into her apartment, changed clothes into something comfier, and went outside to ride her bike and wait for her dad. Her father, Curtis, gets home around 5 p.m. He goes inside the apartment. He notices that the dog really has to go to the bathroom, which he thought was weird because Jamie usually let him out after school. So he starts calling out Jamie's name, but she's not responding. He looks outside. He does not see Jamie, but he also doesn't see her bike, so he assumes that she must be playing outside somewhere. He walks around the neighborhood to see if he can find her. He doesn't. He quickly drives over to the school to see if maybe she stayed after school to study, but she didn't. The last place that he checked was her best friend's neighborhood to see if maybe they were playing together. He saw the best friend, but Jamie wasn't with her, and the best friend said that Jamie should be home by now. And that's when panic set in for Curtis. He checked every location that Jamie could possibly be, but she wasn't anywhere, so he ran back to the apartment complex leasing office and he filled in the staff on what was going on and he asked for help. The manager decided that they should knock on all the neighbors' doors to see if anybody saw something. And when doing so, they ran into a neighbor that said he had seen Jamie around 4 p.m. She was last seen talking to a downstairs neighbor, and he described that neighbor to be the young guy with the pet rat. The young neighbor with the pet rat was 26-year-old Kevin Ray Underwood. He lived on the first floor while Jamie and her dad lived on the second floor. He was always sitting outside with his pet rat, and Jamie would often see him and sometimes even ask to pet the rat. They go downstairs to knock on Kevin's door. Kevin takes a little while to answer, but eventually does. does come to the door and he says that he has seen Jamie that afternoon, but that she was riding her bike to go to the school library. He told them that he didn't know where she was. He wished that he could help look, but he couldn't because he had to go to bed because he had to wake up early the next morning. And that was that. Following that, Curtis called 911 to officially report Jamie as missing. He also called Jamie's mom to let her know that they couldn't find Jamie. A search took place throughout the night with officers and a lot of volunteers. They searched for hours. The next morning, the FBI joined the search and an Amber Alert was put out for Jamie Bolan. Family and friends of Curtis's failed his apartment in attempts to be supportive of the family. The FBI set up roadblocks to question drivers in the area to see if maybe they could get a lead that way. One of the vehicles that they stopped was that neighbor's car, the neighbor with the pet rat. Kevin Ray Underwood, his father, was driving the vehicle, and when they were stopped and asked about the situation, his dad pointed to his son and he told the FBI agent, "My son is the little girl's neighbor." With that, sorry, I'm like trying to move around. The sun is setting weird. Forgive me. With that, Kevin was asked to walk over to one of their patrol cars and help answer some questions. Kevin agreed to talk to them, and that conversation lit up some red flags. So much so that they asked Kevin to go with them to the station to see if they could continue their conversation. Kevin goes with the officers. His father leaves, and the officers tell him that they'll just give Kevin a ride back home later. Who is Kevin Underwood? Kevin was born and raised in Oklahoma. His family consisted of his mom, dad, and a little sister. As a child, Kevin was bullied and had a very large effect on him. The once happy little boy turned to be very shy, very nervous, not good in social interactions, and all that plus more left his self-esteem on the floor. Because Kevin struggled to make friends in real life, he turned to the internet and he would spend hours on his computer a day. He would look up things that he had interest in, or he would just chat with strangers in chat rooms. Kevin did go to college, but his anxiety and depression took such a toll on him that he ended up dropping out and he moved back home. He spent most of his hours online on his computer. He even started his own blog where he would write almost daily about his life. In his blog, Kevin talked about his love life, about how he always wanted a girlfriend, but no girls seemed to be interested in him in that way, and that really upset him. He would write about it. He would talk about how it would make his anxiety skyrocket, the fact that he really wanted to be intimate with a girl, but no one wanted to do that with him, or no one looked at him in that way. He got a part-time job at Carl's Jr., and by 2005, Kevin had enough money saved up to move out and get an apartment of his own at Purcell Park, the same apartment complex where Jamie and her father Curtis lived. Kevin's social interactions were getting so hard it became difficult for him to do day-to-day tasks, so he went to go see a doctor who diagnosed him with severe social anxiety and major depressive disorder. He was also prescribed Lexapro, which helped him a lot when he took it, but he only took it when he felt like it. His blog posts gradually became more and more aggressive. When answering a question in his blog, he wrote about how he had constant thoughts of killing people in his head. He also wrote about sick fantasies that he had. He would constantly look at pictures of girls, but what got him excited were violent pictures, such as pictures of deceased girls and their autopsies. In reference to his fantasies, he wrote in his blog about how the things that he would fantasize about were so wrong and so gruesome that if anyone ever found out about them, he would be put in jail. To help his loneliness, Kevin Underwood got that pet rat, and it did help him a little, but he was still very antisocial, depressed, anxious, and in his blog, he wrote, quote, "All I want in life is to be able to live like a normal person. I've been really bad again lately, probably worse than I've ever been before," end quote. That is a little bit about who Kevin is. Back to the story. Kevin is at the station now. He's talking to investigators. He seems uncomfortable and he tells officers that this is because he's just not good at talking to people. He tells them he's nervous because he's not only not good at talking to people, but also he's nervous of being looked at as a suspect. And also he let them know that the media was putting out wrong information because the media was describing Jamie last seen wearing a pink shirt, but Kevin told officers that she was wearing a blue shirt. Alarm bells were going off in investigators' head, but they didn't really have anything yet. Then the officer offered Kevin a ride home. He agreed. They drove home. When they got there, the officer asked Kevin if he could take a look inside his apartment just to make sure that Jamie was not in there, for them to be able to confidently say that they looked absolutely everywhere in that apartment complex and that she was not there. Kevin agrees to let the officer inside. They walk in together and it smells like Febreze, but too much like Febreze, almost as if Kevin was trying to mask a smell. The officer then sees a plastic bin. He asks Kevin if he could look inside of it, and Kevin says, "Stop, just arrest me." To which the officer responded, "Where is she?" And Kevin says, "She's in there," pointing to the plastic bin. He says, "She's in there. I chopped her up." Kevin Underwood was immediately arrested, taken back to the station, and the apartment was taped off as a crime scene. The family was made aware of the horrific news. Jamie's father was so heartbroken he had to be checked into a hospital for days to be sedated because the pain was too much for him to bear. Kevin's confession, brace yourselves. I do not know how someone can be capable of committing such terrible, terrible things and then be able to talk about them in the most casual way possible. I will never understand. The interview is online if you do want to look it up. It's long. Kevin told investigators that he didn't specifically pick Jamie to be his victim. He said that it could have been anyone, but that day Jamie just happened to ask if she could pet his pet rat, and she willingly went inside. When she was inside, Kevin put on SpongeBob on the TV for this little 10-year-old innocent girl to watch, and as she was watching TV, he snuck up behind her and attacked her. Kevin said that he had been planning to do this for a little bit over a month, and he decided that he would do it to a child because they were smaller and it would be easier. He said his plans were to kill them and then eat them because Kevin always wondered what humans tasted like. Kevin said his plans were to keep the lifeless body in perfect condition so that he could keep it on his bed for a couple of days. Keep it on his bed to SA the body. He said he had a Barbie doll in his bedroom with pins and needles stuck to the face and said that that was something that he wanted to do with his victim, which he purchased barbecue skewers to use and poke through their cheeks. He said that after 1 of 2 days of keeping the body, he had plans to start butchering it and cooking it, which for he purchased a meat tenderizer for. As far as disposing of the body, Kevin said that he was planning to keep some of the bones, but the other he could just crush up and scatter around so that they wouldn't be visible and found. And Kevin told investigators that as far as everything else, he planned to cook and eat as much as he could. Towards the end of the interview, Kevin said, quote, "I know what I did was wrong and I know that I deserve to be punished for it." At the end of his confession, he became extremely ill and started throwing up everywhere. In February of 2008, the jury deliberated for only 23 minutes before they found Kevin Underwood guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to death, and on October of this year, his execution was rescheduled and is now scheduled to happen December 19th of 2024, which also is his 45th birthday.
Today we are going to be talking about the world's youngest serial killer. Amarjit Sada was born in 1998 in Bihar, India, and it was a difficult life for him and his family. His parents were laborers, and they barely made enough money to even make ends meet, and when Amarjit was 7 years old, his mother gave birth to a baby girl, which means that they now had 4 mouths to feed, so it made it even more difficult for them. As a child, Amarjit was reserved and very quiet. He loved climbing trees and just roaming around his village. He had no friends and was a loner, but he enjoyed his own company. And during this time, his aunt and his 6-month-old cousin came to visit him and his family, and his aunt actually found a job in the city, so she wanted to leave her baby with them for a little bit while she settled into her career. And just a few days after his aunt left to go to her new job, his mother went to the market, just to get some groceries, of course, leaving him in charge with both of the babies. And as he looked at his cousin fast asleep on his bed, he started pinching and slapping his cousin, and he even started giggling when the baby started crying, and gradually he became even more sinister. He then put his hands around his cousin's throat and strangled him until he stopped breathing. And during this, he was laughing and enjoying every single moment of this situation. And after he killed his cousin, he then went to a nearby forest and grabbed a brick and bashed his cousin's head in, and then buried his cousin underneath the grass and went home like nothing happened. And he actually confessed this information to his mother, and she was so shocked. She did not know what to do, and his father actually physically punished him for this, but instead of handing him over to the police, they shielded him and said that it was a complete accident. And just like that, Amarjit Sada moved on to his next victim. It was winter, it was the afternoon, his parents were taking a nap. He turned all of his attention to his 8-month-old sister. He approached her smiling, all gently, lifted her by her coat, and strangled her to death. And his mother went to the room because she heard the wails of her baby, and she went to go breastfeed her, and she immediately noticed that her baby was dead. His mother actually asked him, "Did you kill your little sister?" And he smiled and said yes. His father slapped him and asked him why he would ever do that, and he said, quote unquote, just like that. Their neighbors actually found out about this, and they advised the parents to go to the police, but they shielded him once again. And finally, his third and final victim was actually a baby outside of his family. 2007, he was roaming around the local school and saw a baby just sitting in her stroller outside. And her mother actually just needed to run some quick errands, so she left her baby asleep underneath a tree, thinking that her baby was going to be fine and nothing would ever happen. And while the mother was busy running her errands, Amarjit took the baby into a forest next to the school and smashed her face in with a rock, killing her instantly. And then he buried her in the grass and walked away as if nothing happened once again. When her mother returned and noticed that her baby wasn't there, she sounded the alarm, and everybody began searching for her baby, and finally someone remembered that they had actually seen Amarjit carrying her away from the stroller. Right then and there, Amarjit Sada was taken in for questioning, where he not only confessed to this murder, he also confessed to the murder of his cousin and his little sister. The police decided that they had enough evidence to build a case on him, but by Indian law, he was not old enough to be convicted of these crimes. So they put him in a juvenile remand home for 3 years, and now his whereabouts are completely unknown. That is the story of the youngest serial killer in the world. I find this case so interesting, and also this scares me for some reason a lot because he's a little kid and he's capable of doing really scary things like this. And he's capable of this already at such a young age, and now we have no idea where he is.
My boyfriend cheated on me with his girl best friend story time. So a little bit of backstory. So when I was 17, 18, I had a boyfriend and I was like so in love. Anyway, so I'd known him for maybe like 3 or 4 months, like officially dating. And he was telling me that in his past, like he's done something really terrible. And I was like, like, I don't care what you've done in your past. Like, it's fine. Like, he was an 18-year-old boy. Like, how bad could it have been? And then he goes to me, he's like, oh, you know how I've slept with one person? And I knew he previously had with one person, but I just assumed it was one of, like, the girls he'd, like, had a thing with. I never asked who it was because I didn't really care. And then he was like, so it was Patricia. Also, let's call my ex-boyfriend Bob and we'll call his girl best friend Patricia. So he's like, oh, like, the person I slept with was Patricia. And I was like, oh, like, your girl best friend. Like, oh, like, it's in the past. It's okay. I don't care. Also, keep in mind, I was 17 or 18, so I was naive. Like, if I was dating someone for, like, 3-4 months now and they had a girl best friend and they only decided to tell me, like, 3 months into the relationship that they've slept with her, I'd be like, bitch, what? So I was like, that's fine. Like, thanks for telling me. And then he just kind of went silent and I was like, what's the problem? And he's like, oh, like, I slept with Patricia this year. Sorry, not this year. He said, like, on a certain date, like, around that time. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And he went silent. And I'm like, oh, like, was Patricia with her boyfriend when you guys did that? Let's call Patricia's boyfriend Patrick. So basically, Bob slept with Patricia whilst Patricia was in a relationship with Patrick. And I was like, oh, does, like, Patrick know? And he's like, no, he doesn't know. So ever since then, I was just really, like, guilty. I felt, like, upset that I, like, knew about this situation. And I would see, like, Patricia and Patrick. I don't know why I made the fake name so confusing. Because I would see them and I would know that, like, Patricia cheated on Patrick, but I couldn't say anything because my boyfriend asked me not to. Also, this is my ex-boyfriend, by the way. I hope I mentioned. Anyway, so Patricia and Bob, they work together at, like, a fast food store. Let's just say it's KFC, but it's not KFC. Anyway, so they worked at KFC together and they went to their Christmas party, like, together in a group. So they go to this Christmas party together and, yeah, I'm fine with that. I don't care. Like, they're going in a group, they're friends, nothing's happening, right? No, wrong. Anyway, so that night of the Christmas party, I always wake up in the middle of the night and I woke up at like 3 a.m. and I saw that Bob had messaged me photos of him crying. Like, it was just like multiple photos or maybe one photo, I don't know, just a picture of him crying. And then when I woke up, I was like, oh my God, like, are you okay? Like, what's wrong? And then when he woke up in the morning, he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry about that. Like, I was just drunk. And I didn't think anything of it because I was like, oh, like, some people, like, cry when they're drunk. Like, I have drunk too much, So then fast forward, like, 3 months later. Also, I did not have a second thought about that photo. Like, I was just like, oh, he was drunk, whatever. Fast forward, like, 3 or 4 months, like, Bob and I are having, like, some, like, little D&M. And he's like, you're too good for me. And I was like, why would you say such a thing? Like, don't speak like that. Like, I'm not too good for you. And he's like, no, like, you actually are. Like, you're way too good for me. And I can't remember exactly what he said, but I was like, well, it's kind of sounding like you cheated on me. And when I asked him if he had cheated on me, he was like, I have. And I was like, immediately I was like, was it with Patricia? And he was like, yes. So as the mature 18-year-old that I am, I messaged Patricia and I'm like, why'd you sleep with my boyfriend? And then she messaged me back. She's like, oh my God, what? Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And also, we'll get to this later, but this is how I know, like, she was lying about the whole situation. Just save that in mind for later. So the second that I messaged her that, she messaged Bob and was like, I'm going to kill you. Obviously, she didn't mean that literally, but that's what she said. And then within about 5 minutes, I am blocked by Patricia on all social media. I'm blocked by Patrick on all social media. So obviously she knew that I knew what had happened and that I didn't want her to tell Patrick. Also, Patrick and Patricia are still dating at this point. Anyway, so I feel like it's pretty obvious that Patricia was guilty, because why would you block me on everything when I know this information and then block your boyfriend's account on... She went into her boyfriend's account and then blocked me and Bob on everything. Anyway, so the next day, Bob and I arranged to meet up. And also, if you've been cheated on, you know, like, how gut-wrenching it is when you find out. Like, your heart just, like, sinks. It's like, if you know, you know. I hope you don't know, though. So we meet up the next day, and I was like, let's, like, have a talk. Like, I was planning on breaking up with him, obviously, because I was like, I need to know what happened. So Bob and I meet up, and then Bob makes up a really interesting story, which I was stupid enough to believe. Now I'd be like, wow, you're a great storyteller, but I don't believe a single thing you say. Okay, I've lost my powder puff and I'm very upset, but anyway. So we meet up and we're chatting. Oh my God, I can't use this brush. So he tells me this is the real story. So basically they were going to Uber home together from the KFC Christmas party because they lived really close together. Like, they lived close to each other. And then, so they're Ubering home, and then apparently, very close to their house, this is the part that makes no sense. She needed a pee. Patricia needed a pee. So she's like, oh, let's pull over, like, near a public toilet. Anyway, so she pees, and then she's like, oh, let's hang out in the park for a bit. Which, I don't know about you guys, but if my partner was hanging out with someone else at a park at, like, 2 a.m., 1 a.m. with someone they've previously slept with, I don't like that. So then apparently they were, like, sitting at the park, just, like, talking about life, you know, as you do. Anyway, so then apparently they were talking, and she's like, oh, remember when we slept together? And he was like, huh? What? And then apparently she got on top of him and then tried to shove it in soft. Excuse me? Firstly, like, how is someone that's, like, half your size able to pull your pants down, pull your undies off, grab, you know, out, and then you know what I mean? So he was basically saying that she, like, tried to, but he didn't want to, even though the story just made absolutely no sense at all. So then I was like to him, so, like, if she just tried to, you know, come on to you and you didn't want anything and you didn't do anything, why'd you say you cheated on me? And he was like, oh, like, no, like, I just felt like I had cheated on you, like, even though I didn't. And I was like, oh my God, like, baby, like, we don't have to break up. Like, oh my God. It was just so dumb. Anyway, so then ever since, like, that happened, literally every single week I was like, no offense, Bob, like, I don't believe you. Like, I just had this, like, pit feeling in my gut. Like, and I was like, this story, like, makes no sense at all. And it also made no sense to me that, like, why would you tell someone you cheated on them if you didn't? Like, that's just a very, like, why would you do that? Literally, like, probably about once a week. I think it ended up, like, over time worsening. Every week I'd be like, Bob, like, this story doesn't make sense. Like, please, like, if you cheated on me, just tell me. Like, I'm not going to be mad at you. Like, you know, like, I just want to know the truth. Anyway, I'd be like, please, like, if you cheated on me, just tell me. And he's like, I promise I didn't. And I would be, like, bawling my eyes out, like, basically begging him to tell me if he did or not. And he'd be like, no, I didn't. And it was really interesting because every single time he said I didn't, he couldn't look me in the eyes. He would, like, slightly look away. So that's also why I thought he was lying, which he was. Anyway, so we end up breaking up because I'm like, look, I'm so sorry if you didn't cheat on me, but I don't believe you. And he's like, yeah, like, I didn't. Like, I'm so sorry you feel that way, though. Whatever. Anyway, months and months and months later, after we break up, okay, not that long, maybe like 3 or 4 months after we broke up, he was like, oh, like, look, I did cheat on you. And I was like, why did you lie to me? Like, he couldn't even admit it until, like, months and months after we broke up. And then he was like, oh, like, I didn't want to hurt your feelings. Like, that's why I didn't tell you. Which I hate when people say that. It's like, seriously? Yeah, so he said that he didn't want to hurt me. That's why he didn't tell me. And then he's like, oh, Annalise, like, if you tell anyone, like, I think I'm going to kill myself. Which I think that's, like, such a disgusting thing to say as a threat. Like, he was just saying that to try and make me not tell anyone. He's very much alive, by the way. Okay, I'm running out of time to finish my makeup, but basically Even months after we broke up, I spoke to Patricia, I spoke to Bob. Both of them denied it. They lied to their friends, which had obviously happened because why would Patricia just go and block me on everything? And when I asked Patricia, oh, like, if it didn't happen, like, why did you block me on everything? She was like, oh my God, it was so weird. Like, one day I just couldn't message you on anything. And I sure as hell didn't block her. And